Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast hosted by the Fantasy Holics. You know, this week we're kind of wrapping up the little segment we've been doing here about our top players at each position. We started with the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Now we're wrapping up in the tight ends. Next week we're going to get into some divisional breakdowns of some players at each position there. But this week, without further ado, we're going to get into our tight ends. Brant, what do you have to say about this top 12 tight end rankings here?
Well, top 12, we were able to discuss it a little bit more prior to actually recording this week. I know we've had our issues discussing our rankings. And we noticed that the top 12 are the same players, same 12 players, different spots. So in consensus, we're actually pretty even on this one here, not a whole lot to argue about. Just a heads up, it's a little warm in our recording area, so when I start slurring my words, you guys know why now.
Yeah, slurring them on sweat, not alcohol.
Yeah, not alcohol.
Family-friendly show here at the Fatboyz for the most part. Well, let's just get right into it, and we'll start at number one, and I think number one is fairly consensus for the both of us. Again, this is dynasty rankings, not redraft, so in a redraft, obviously, they'd be a little different. But at number one, it's Kyle Pitts. You know, Kyle's 21 years of age there in Atlanta. He's got last year his stats were he had 110 targets with 68 receptions for 1,026 yards, 1 touchdown, and 17 games played. Now, the interesting thing about this is he had 110 targets. That's pretty good. I mean, that's actually really good for a rookie tight end. And the interesting thing is there's 287 vacated targets there in Atlanta, with Calvin Ridley being fully suspended this year. I know he missed half the season last year. Russell Gage is gone. Hayden Hurst is gone. Mike Davis is gone. Those are some guys that were freeing up targets from. And I'm not saying all 287 of those are going to go to Kyle Pitts by any stretch of the imagination, but Kyle Pitts' targets should go up. I'd expect him to be in the 130, 135 range this year. If he finds the end zone a half a dozen more times than what he did this year, right there alone, he's a top 2, top 3 tight end, all depending on what the next guy in the rankings does. Brant, do you want to touch on Kyle Pitts at all there? Kyle
Pitts he was a freak coming out of college. His athletic ability. I mean, this guy, he lines up as outside wide receiver, flex wide receiver, tight end. What'd they call him coming out? A unicorn?
The unicorn.
The unicorn.
Yes.
This guy, I mean, almost head and shoulders, really, in dynasty rankings, he's almost head and shoulders above the rest due to his young age. I'm not saying his skill level is head and shoulders above the rest, but due to his young age, this guy, he's going to receive the targets. Atlanta's defense is middle of the road, to say the better end of it. So, yeah, I mean, Kyle Pitts, he's going to see a lot of targets. You guys are going to be playing from behind a lot. I'm sorry, Falcons will be. I don't want to wrap you into that.
Don't quite have a contract with the team yet. We're working on it.
Working on that.
I'm almost in peak physical condition for it, too.
Yeah, if we were at an eating buffet.
Well, ball boy or water boy, maybe I might be in.
I don't think you're running any balls out there.
Probably not.
All right. So at number 2, I'm pretty sure we're consistent across the board here, which is kind of funny because we go from the youngest one in our rankings to the oldest one in our rankings. It's Travis Kelce out of Kansas City. We all know what Travis Kelce can do. There's not a whole lot of, talk that we need to have out here to back this up. I do know you had a very interesting ranking, or a very interesting stat that you told me earlier today that is kind of crazy. How many vacated targets were out there in Kansas City?
Yeah, so it's a lot, but it's 340 vacated targets. Obviously, the big one being Tyreek Hill gone, Byron Pringle's gone. There's just been a different revolving door of guys gone. And obviously, again, these are not all going to go to Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce last year had 134 targets, 92 receptions, 1,125 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 16 games played. So he missed a game. I will say I expect the touchdowns to go up. I think the yards go down a little bit this year. I'm thinking targets are going to be in the 140 range, 150, until Patrick Mahomes establishes that rapport and trust with some of these other guys that were brought in this year. But 340 vacated targets is a lot. And if Travis Kelce's target share goes up, this guy's going to be comfortably the number 1 tight end again this year.
Absolutely. I could see Travis Kelce seeing probably one of his most targeted season, even at the age of 32. He's definitely going to be the most trusted target that Patrick Mahomes has left on the team.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and hit my number 3 because I know this is where you and I kind of start to differ a little bit here on our rankings. But for me, it's George Kittle. And listen, I know George Kittle's not been able to keep himself on the field for a whole lot of games lately. The last couple of years he's dealt with some injury issues. But he does have Trey Lance coming in, projected to be the starter this year finally, after, sitting behind Jimmy G all year last year. Again, until that actually happens, I don't know how I feel about it, but we do know that young quarterbacks like to lean on their tight end, their running backs that can catch the ball a little bit too. But last year, for George Kittle, 94 targets for 71 receptions, 910 yards, and 6 touchdowns on only 14 games played. So if he plays, 3 more games and finishes the whole season on the route or the trend that he was heading, he would have been a top 5 tight end last year. And there's 49 vacated targets in San Francisco, so not a whole lot. But again, full season of George Kittle, I expect him to be in that 120 target range, probably 8 to 9 touchdowns as well. So
Absolutely. So my number 3, and really the biggest difference between my 3 and 4 is I have Mark Andrews at 3 and I have Kittle at 4. The biggest issue, or the biggest upside for me having Andrews above Kittle is, Andrews played a full season last year. He saw 154 targets, and there's 145 vacated there in just with Hollywood Brown being gone. So, the vacated targets really, are great for his upside here. We know that, Lamar Jackson, running back, leans on his tight end and Mark Andrews. I think you're going to see Andrews, used a lot more in versatile roles. So I really just like Andrews just a wee bit more than Kittle. Kittle's upside to me that is better than Mark Andrews is that yak ability. And like you said, that young quarterback's going to rely probably quite a bit on his tight end. And that yak ability for Kittle is phenomenal. And that's why it's almost 3A, 3B. And it was just, kind of where my pen wrote down which name was which there, where it went as 3 and 4.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Mark Andrews, you have him at 3, you had Kittle at 4, I believe. So you and I just swapped our 3 and 4 there. I had Mark Andrews at 4 as well. Is that there's 267 vacated targets in Baltimore. And that's really fascinating to me because, again, Lamar Jackson's the quarterback. I just don't.
When did he throw that many times?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, the thing is, I expect there to be almost a little bit of regression. Mark Andrews was the tight end 1 last year. Everybody's kind of hyping up Rashad Bateman. I know you and I are kind of starting to buy into that. You're more into it than I am.
I bought into it a year ago.
Yeah, you're more into it than I am. But in order for Rashad Bateman to kind of blow up, there has to be less Mark Andrews, in my opinion. Again, 154 targets, 107 receptions, 1,361 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 17 games played. I'm not sure he stays up to that 17 games played. I think he may miss a game or two. I don't expect the yards to be as high as they were. Receptions, I could see them being where they're at, but I think targets come down a little bit just because of Rashad Bateman. And I think Dobbins is going to get some passes out of the backfield as well there this year. But I still think comfortably, especially in dynasty rankings, top 4 is pretty unanimous here.
Absolutely. So my number 5 is Pat Freiermuth there in Pittsburgh. 23 years old. He's got an incoming QB in
Mitch Trubisky.
And he also has a rookie, Kenny Pickett, knocking just to become a starting quarterback there. And like you already said,
well, Kenny Two Gloves.
Yeah, but the rookies, the young ones, normally want to rely on their tight end, and he gets this young tight end stud who showed that he could be pretty good in the red zone and pretty good all over the field last year. I think we see more of Freiermuth being used in the red zone, and I think we're going to see more of him on the field this year. And when you're on the field more, that normally leads to a few more targets, receptions, touchdowns. Everything just is on the uprise here, and I absolutely love the fit there in Pittsburgh with Pat Freiermuth too.
Yeah, Pat. I like Pat a lot. I went and drafted him in our Fantasy Holics Superflex Dynasty that we just did. Second to George Kittle, just because George Kittle doesn't seem to stay on the field. But nonetheless, I have him a little bit down, so I'll talk about him when I get to him. But at my number 5, I actually have Dawson Knox. And Dawson Knox is one that people may scratch their head at a little bit. But my rationale behind this is that he played 15 games last year, all right, and the numbers aren't really eye-popping until you get to one certain category. 71 targets, 49 receptions, 587 yards for 9 touchdowns, okay? What that says to me is when Josh Allen can't use his legs in the red zone, he's looking at Dawson Knox. 199 vacated targets in Buffalo coming into this year. I do expect Dawson Knox to be closer to 100 targets this year, probably somewhere in the 75 to 80 reception range, probably looking at 700 yards, and I think those touchdowns stay pretty similar to where they're at. Again, Dawson Knox is pretty young. He's coming in at 25 years of age, so him and Josh Allen could be together for quite a few more years. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have Dawson Knox later on in my rankings. I'll get to that here in a little bit about where I have him and why. Well, I'll just roll. You just want me to roll into my next one here?
Yeah, number 6 we have as the same. So let's roll into number 6.
Oh, T.J. Hockenson. Wow, looking at the wrong list. Yes, I have T.J. Hockenson at number 6. My main reason for having him so much lower than a lot of other people do have him is we talked about this on an earlier cast. Where are the targets going to go? You got Amon St. Brown showed out. They just used a high draft pick on Williams. You got T.J. Hockenson, DeAndre Swift, both coming back healthy this year.
Jamal Williams is going to catch the
Jamal
passes.
Williams. They added DJ Chark this offseason. I'm just not sure where all this volume is going to come from. We know that Goff can sustain 2 fantasy-relevant pass catchers along with the fantasy-relevant running back. We saw that with the Rams. I'm just not 100% dead set on T.J. Hockenson. Other than that, I mean, he probably would break my top 5 if I saw a little bit more. But sitting here at 6, that's where I'm comfortable taking him.
Yeah, he only played 12 games last year, so I think that hurts his case a little bit for top 5 as well. But the thing that's kind of scary to me is there's only 37 vacated targets in Detroit. 37. That's not a lot.
Yeah, and they added quite a bit.
And they did add a ton. So it's really going to be interesting how the pecking order shakes out. But again, this is another guy that's only 25 years of age, still pretty young. And at his age and his track record and what he's done and things, I just don't think it'd be right to take him much further than where he's at this point. But again, the 37 vacated targets and all they added this offseason does scare me a little bit as well. At number 7, I actually have Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz finished the year, won a lot of people a lot of championship leagues. I know our local dynasty league that we do with a bunch of guys we work with, Brant, Dalton Schultz was pretty responsible solely for winning a title in that league.
That's pretty gross.
But Dalton Schultz last year, 104 targets, 78 receptions, 808 yards, 8 touchdowns in 17 games played. And again, 205 vacated targets in Dallas. You had Amari Cooper leave. You've got Michael Gallup missing at least half the season probably. And so, Dalton Schultz and Dak built that great chemistry down the stretch. And a lot of people last year, even the last 2 years really, it's been, is it going to be Dalton Schultz? Is it going to be Blake Jarwin? One of these guys is going to be a stud. Who's it going to be? Well, it finally came out to be that it was Dalton Schultz last year. And again, he was a championship winner. I just don't necessarily want to put the horse in front of the cart and say he's going to replicate that until I see him replicate that. Now, he comes out and does that again this year. Yeah, again, another one that's only 25 years of age. He does that again this year. He's going to be in the conversation for top 5 in dynasty rankings moving forward. But on 1 year doing that, I'm not comfortable putting him in there. I know you have him a little lower than I do.
Yeah, I do.
But again, Dalton Schultz is who I have at 7.
I'm going to say I have Schultz at 10, and pretty much the same reason you just hit on. I just don't know how comfortable I am moving him up any higher than that after only 1 year of a good year. My number 7, though, I have Darren Waller. I know, shock. Darren Waller is not a top 5 dynasty tight end.
Wait till you hear my rankings.
Yes. In our rankings, neither one of us have Darren Waller in the top 5. You added Adams. You trust everything to do with Renfro, Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, all there. Kenyon Drake, all still there. Where are these targets going to get replicated for Darren Waller? Not to mention, if you remember the first couple years of his career, he was not top tier tight end.
No, he was terrible.
He was
terrible.
He's also had legal troubles and some other things that have held him out of games. He had the injury, or he was questionable almost every week last year. I'm not even 100% sure how many games he played.
11 games.
11, thank you. And he's 29 years old. He's already on that decline. I know we say decline at 29, which is crazy when Kelsey is 32 and balling out. But Waller, everything points to just the downslide of it. And I just don't feel comfortable with him being one of my top 5. It was hard to put him at 7, too. it's really hard to feel comfortable with that with everything that they have added. And they've also come out. I mean, we've also seen them come out and lean on Jacobs and lean on that run to really open it up. Well, guess what? You open it up. I'm sorry, I'm probably not looking for Waller. I'm looking for Davante Adams or my most trusted wide receiver in Hunter Renfrow.
Sure. Yeah, I'll touch on Waller a little bit more here in just a second. I'm going to let you hit number 8.
Number 8, I got Cole Kmet.
Love it.
Love it. He's one of the only pass catchers that you might know his name in Chicago. You got Darnell Mooney. You got Cole Kmet. Montgomery's not much of a pass-catching back. He can catch the ball. Yes, we have seen that. But he's not known for that. Cole Kmet is nothing, but everything is pointing to his increase. He got on the field last year, and he had a very decent season. All he's getting is the off season to build chemistry with Fields. And I'm sorry, when you're running for your life, we saw it with Russell quite a bit. You look for your tight end quite a bit. That's why Seattle has about 22 of them on their roster.
Absolutely.
But, so Cole Kmet could be a safety blanket for Fields, drawing up plays for him. He's a great pass blocker, so he's going to get on the field. Cole Kmet's a guy that I'm very comfortable with drafting, and he's, 23 years old in a system that hasn't done anything really to help the quarterback with receiving wise. I absolutely love Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I'm real big on Cole Kmet too, Brant. Just not quite as high on him as you are. I've got at my number 8. I've got Pat Freiermuth. Just like you kind of alluded to earlier, young quarterbacks coming in, or Mitch Trubisky coming in. Kenny Pickett could follow. I think Mitch Trubisky has a couple bad games, and the Steelers Nation is going to kind of be demanding to see that first-round pick on the field, right? But with Pat Freiermuth last year, 79 targets, 60 receptions, 497 yards, 7 touchdowns in 16 games played. Again, another thing I want to allude to here is we've seen these cold weather nasty games get dominated by the run game and the tight end position in the past, right? Because a lot of times your tight ends are running like 10-yard curls or post routes down towards the goal line. And again, in Pittsburgh, there's also 163 vacated targets. Pat Freiermuth, as a rookie last year, his rookie season would have been pretty well talked about had a guy named Kyle Pitts not been in that same rookie class at the tight end position. This is a guy that, Juju Smith-Schuster is no longer in town. And it should be, with the exception of Chase Claypool, the number one, and I still think probably over Chase Claypool, the number one targeted player in
Deontay Johnson.
No, in the red zone for Pittsburgh.
Sorry,
Deontay Johnson is a target hog. I understand that. No,
I thought you were going to say all over.
No,
I can't read your mind.
In the red zone, no. Yeah, in the red zone. You can when we're staring at a fast food menu, but not when we're doing a podcast.
That's just everything on the menu.
Yeah. I do think, though, with Pat Freiermuth, it would not shock me entirely to see him take another year to fully develop. So I'm not going to say that I think he'll be a top 5 dynasty tight end next year. The year after that, though, I think we could start to see Pat Freiermuth be a top 5 name mentioned. And again, across the board. And again, that tight end position is one that a lot of people punt on, because if you don't get one of those top 3 in the past, it's kind of one of those things where I'll just stream. I don't think the tight end position's really there anymore. I really don't. I'm looking at these top 12 names that you and I both have here, and I'd be comfortable with any one of them in a 12-man league being my tight end 1. And not worrying about the position. Towards the bottom, it's not really set it and forget it, but there are guys that you take off your roster for a week to plug in somebody else matchup based, and they're going to burn you. So these are all names that I'm comfortable with. And the next one is the one that I'm the least fascinated by. I actually traded out of him in an orphan dynasty roster I just took over. And at number 9, I have Darren Waller, okay, who you just talked about. Again, Davante Adams coming to town. Don't need to beat this like a dead horse. Here's one of my things, though. This is my thing. I would not be shocked. Again, I don't have him ranked there, but I would not be shocked if Darren Waller finishes a top 3 tight end this year. Okay? And here's my reasoning why behind that. There's still 234 vacated targets in Las Vegas. Okay? So I know Adams is going to come in and take a ton of those. But Waller only played 11 games last year. Derek Carr does have that chemistry established with Darren Waller. I just don't trust Darren Waller in a dynasty startup draft to be my guy, okay? Redraft, I love Darren Waller this year because one of my sleeper picks for MVP this year is none other than Derek Carr, okay? and solely because he's got a good running back, a good run game in Josh Jacobs, okay, and he's got youth to spell him. He's got Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow, great pass catchers on the wideouts, and he's got Darren Waller, who's been a top 5 tight end. I just don't trust Darren Waller long term. All right, that's my issue with Darren Waller. That's all I'm going to say about it because I could go on for hours, and I just don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It's a Darren Waller truther.
Yeah, absolutely. So my number 9, I have Mike Gesicki there in Miami. Absolutely love the chemistry that he built with Tua last year. I know they added Tyreek Hill, but Gesicki is just like that safe guy in the middle of the field. You know he's going to be open. You know he's going to catch that ball. He's going to get himself a couple yards after reception. His ability, I mean, you may not see the 10 to 12 catches a game or targets a game, but when he gets targeted, he catches the ball.
Sure.
There's not many drops in his pass. He's a guy that I could see being very targeted in the red zone, and you got your smaller guy in Tyreek Hill and Waddle. So, I mean, yeah, they're going to get there burning some people. But if they get down in the red zone, you're going to see Gesicki get targeted a lot. And I am absolutely comfortable with him being at my number 9 spot and, taken later on in the draft. This is one of those guys that you sit back and you miss those top 3. This is one of the guys that I really love that could quietly just slowly creep up the rankings and could finish as a top 5 tight end. Well, you're looking at most drafts, you're probably looking at 10 to 12th round, you're picking this tight end here.
Sure.
Number 10, I got Dalton Schultz. I already hit on that. Just same thing as you. I just don't trust Dallas completely yet. I trust that they're going to throw the ball. I just don't know where yet.
Sure.
And Schultz, where 1 year did it, and then he also had that injury the year prior. So my trust is really the only thing holding him back from me having him as high as you do.
Okay. At number 10, I actually have Cole Kmet. This is one that you and I have both been very high on all offseason. I know you've watched him a lot longer than I have with you being a Notre Dame faithful, going back to his time there in South Bend. But again, Cole Kmet's a guy that really wasn't on my radar until the end of last year, and I was looking to grab as many shares of him as I could at the end of last year. I was lucky enough somebody got careless and dropped him in our dynasty league that we're both in together at work, and I snagged him up with the number 1 waiver claim real quick. It wasn't much of a hesitation. Jimmy Graham's out of town finally, which Jimmy Graham and Tom Brady, which one of them was going to be first? Well, it was Jimmy Graham. He's gone. He's out the door. History, okay? Cole Kmet last year had 93 targets, 60 receptions, 612 yards, 0 touchdowns. No way he has 0 touchdowns
Absolutely
again this year.
There's no way.
No way. All right, and that was in 17 games played. All right, so that's a little scary when you see those numbers, okay? But I'm going to become a Cole Kmet truther, if you will. I've invested in him. I own him. I'm all on board this year. Again, and a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that Chicago did nothing for Justin Fields. So a full off season with Justin Fields this year, and a full season with Justin Fields and him together. Darnell Mooney's going to get peppered with targets. I expect the same for Cole Kmet. All right? That's about all I have to say about old Cole there. At number 11, this is one that I know on last week's episode, Brant, you and I, the hot take was that Green Bay did not have a top 36 wide receiver in Dynasty. And everybody was saying on Facebook, that you got a top-end quarterback. When there's a top-end quarterback, somebody's got to catch the ball. I know in the running back episode, we both kind of alluded that was going to be Aaron Jones.
Yes. Well, there's another guy still sitting.
There is another guy still sitting there, and that's Robert Tonyan. Listen, Robert Tonyan last year only played in 8 games, all right? Devontae Adams was still in town, and he had 29 targets, 18 receptions, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. I know a lot of people have fallen off of Robert Tonyan because the year previously he exploded, right? And then he had this awful year, injury-riddled, with only 18 receptions. I get falling off of him, but there's 248 vacated targets. All right, I know a lot of people are saying Alan Lazard may be the guy. I know a lot of people are saying maybe Christian Watson comes on. I think Alan Lazard's going to be the guy for a little while. I think Christian Watson's going to take some time to come on the scene. I absolutely love Christian Watson.
We know Sammy Watkins isn't going to be the guy except for week 1.
Yeah, he'll explode week 1, and then we'll never hear his name again the rest of the season until he's signed by somebody next year. And next year we're hearing all about how Sammy Watkins is going to be the guy.
Put him in your daily lineups for week 1.
Yeah, a best ball league, he's probably amazing to own. But nonetheless, 248 vacated targets. All right, Devontae Adams is gone. Aaron Jones is not going to get any more or any less than he had last year, probably. Robert Tonyan's going to get a lot of these, all right? I would not be at all shocked to see Robert Tonyan have 115 targets next year. Not at all.
Absolutely. Robert Tonyan is going to be the safety guy for Aaron Rodgers this year, too. Because it used to be Devontae Adams on those crossing routes. That's going to be Tonyan now. It's going to be. I mean, you're going to have Jones coming out of the backfield. Maybe Jones lines up as a slot wideout. This guy is already trusted by Rodgers. Tonyan is going to see targets galore. I don't know how you said what. Anyway, he's definitely going to see 100 targets in my mind.
I'm thinking 115.
So, Tonyan is the guy. Tanyan's the guy to own as a pass catcher in dynasty leagues right now because he's going to see the volume. Now, once again, we hit on that. Lazard will be the guy for some time. Watson, the guy for some times. Randall Cobb will probably be the best wide receiver on that team for a game or two. But Tanyan's going to...
Sammy Watkins for week 1.
And Sammy Watkins for week 1. Robert Tanyan's probably going to be, in my mind, will be always up there in that talks of 5 receptions, 70, 80 yards, and probably averaging close to 0.7 touchdowns per game.
Yeah.
That's going to be amazing to see. So Robert Tonyan's a guy that everything's on the rise for him, and he's in the right spot.
I also want to add out, too, if you're in an established dynasty league already and you don't have that bona fide stud at tight end, you can probably get Robert Tonyan for real cheap this offseason.
Nickels on the dollar.
Because, again, a lot of people are just going to see what happened last year, not why it happened and what's to look forward to this year. Again, big believer in Christian Watson, but it's going to take him time to develop in the NFL. The route tree's not polished. He's not coming from a Power 5 school like, Chris Olave or Drake London or some of these other guys. His route tree's going to take some time to develop. And while that's developing, it's going to take him even longer to gain Aaron Rodgers' trust. And like you alluded to, Robert Tonyan's already got it. Invest in Robert Tonyan.
Absolutely. Invest. My number 12, I got Dawson Knox. You already hit on it earlier. With the addition of James Cook, Stephon Diggs is still there.
Gabe
Davis emerging.
Jamison Crowder.
Crowder being added. Dawson Knox, thank you. I just completely blanked on everybody but Diggs. And Dawson Knox, he's still a guy that in a 12-man league I absolutely would have faith as being a tight end 1. I just don't know where he's going to fluctuate there in my rankings. He's a guy that I definitely wanted to make sure I got in. He's only 25 years old. He has the trust of Josh Allen. He sees the targets in the red zone. So he's going to finish, and I honestly believe Dawson Knox is going to be one of those guys that every single week he's going to finish inside the top 10. So he's going to be a top 10 tight end. But where he finishes and how this all shakes out over the years to come is why I have him at 12. But like I said, he's still only 25 years old.
To round out my top 12, I had Mike Gesicki at 12. And my reasoning for having him as low as I do is really simple. Because for the last 2 years, I've been a huge Mike Gesicki truther. And I had to trade him this offseason to build wide receiver depth. So I'm trying to distance myself from that relationship a little bit. But on top of that, again, this is the make or break year for Tua. I'm not sure how much. Again, Tua is another one that I've been a truther for the last 2 years. Traded him this offseason, trying to move on a little bit.
So everybody you trade should have great years.
Probably so, because that's typically how it seems to work. But I just don't know where Mike Gesicki's going to fall in the pecking order. Chase Edmonds is a hellacious pass-catching back. Was their first signing of the new coaching regime there in Miami. I just don't know where Mike Gesicki falls. Again, this is another guy who week in and week out, he could be a tight end 1 on the roster or on the week, but he could also finish as the tight end 30. So it's just going to be dependent on how it looks with Tua for a full season, with Tyreek, with Jalen Waddle. I'd like to see how that finishes. But nonetheless, this brings us through our top 12. Again, same names in the spots, just different places of where we had the same 12 names. Next week, we're going to be coming at you guys with the breakdown of the NFC South. I do want to say real quick, Seth Berger on the IDP podcast put out a mock draft last week where it was a rookie mock draft that sprinkled in some IDP. Give that a listen. It was really good. And last week was the first episode for the Flex.
Yes.
It's a redraft strategy podcast that's hosted by the Fantasy Holics as well. Josh Rodriguez did a really good job on that podcast as well. So go ahead and give those a listen if you haven't. Maybe Dynasty's not your cup of tea and redraft or IDP is more your speed. Go give those guys a listen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you just said, we're going to hit the NFC South next week, and then we're gonna alternate here with the NFC, AFCs going all the way down for the next
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Thank you. Wow. So, without further ado, we're going to get up out of this heat. As always,
Stay hungry.
and stay fat, my friends.